as you're going through it and you're talking about it, and you said, my way of doing treatment was what I was told to do. And I realized, I don't know if this is the solution on treating things. It sounded like at one phase, you were almost frustrated, which influenced you to want to do a little more research. When I get a friend and I'll say, Pat, I'm going through really challenging times. I'm depressed, all this stuff. I'll say, listen, have you sat down and talked to somebody? No. Go see a therapist or go see a psychiatrist or somebody. Okay, go recommend to somebody. And they go to them, and it's as if psychologists nowadays, their number one thing they do is what? Here's Zoloft, here's Prozac, here's this, take this, right? Or you tell somebody, I can't sleep at night. I'm having such a hard time sleeping. And they go see a sleep doctor, right? And, say, hey, you need to take Lorazepam, you need to take this pill to help you go to sleep at night. It's immediate medication. Question for you becomes the following. Is the way doctors are treating patients in all different worlds, is it the way it is today because of lack of advancement? Is it the way it is today because the method is kind of like, well, this is how we've always done it. This is how you treat them. Just do this. So they're not willing to change a lot and entertain new ways? Or is a part of it because there is the big sponsors of universities are possibly bigger pharma, that there's money in this thing as well to make sure that the pills are being sold because that's a form of money being made. And these things are very profitable. Which one of those things is what makes you think, I mean, this is your world. I'm just curious and I'm being skeptical because that's the way I am. Is it lack of advancement? Is it we just don't want to change? This is how we've been doing it and take our order and give this treatment because this is what works? Or is it big pharma behind closed doors doesn't want these treatments to stop because it's pretty profitable?
Unfortunately, I think the answer is the last one. I think it's very profitable. So there's a ton of ways that doctors are influenced to prescribe more medications, even when it's marginally useful. And if you ever speak to a doctor, everything is very familiar. So, you see you have these drug reps, which will come in and they'll take you to dinner, right? Fancy dinner. And they're not supposed to, there's actually guidelines on this, but they'll take you to the fanciest place ever, right? And they'll treat you to a nice dinner and whatever. And they get this all the time. So that's one way they influence you. They do these talks, for example, and this is all through medical school. And it happens I could go to dinner at a fancy restaurant literally 5 times a week if I wanted to, all for free, like literally like $200 meals. I could do that free. I just sign up, like wow. They'll do it no problem. So the thing is that they influence you in very subtle ways. And of course, for the big pharma, these are not by accident. They know what gives them a return on their investments. And they know because they actually track every single prescription that I write. So I will write a prescription and I'll send it to the pharmacy, and they buy information from the pharmacy and do it for everything. So wow. Every single prescription that I write, they know. So when I go to some free drug dinner, I actually don't go to any of these, but I used to like 15 years ago. So if I went to some free drug dinner where I got some free thing and they were promoting some blood pressure pill, they could see that immediately my prescription rate of that blood pressure pill compared to another one, which was probably cheaper and equally as effective, went up. And that's why they keep doing this, and they keep inviting people out. Then the problem is that level of corruption moves all the way up. So then the next thing they do is you get offered a role as a paid speaker. So what they'll do is they'll give me a opportunity to give a talk for other doctors, and they'll pay me. And again, I don't do this, but I could do this if I wanted to. Pay me $1,500 for a couple of hours to enjoy a nice dinner and just talk to some other, non-specialist about a drug. And it wasn't any random talk. They would give you the slide deck. So they're like, this is what you're going to say. And unfortunately, a lot of people do that. It's easy money. It's a free dinner, like $200. It's $1,500. and you get to feel like a big shot because you're talking to other doctors, teaching other doctors. Then you get up to the professors and the people in the university. They're not talking a few $100 here and there. They're raking it in from big pharma. So the big pharma companies are sponsoring them. They get these people to do studies where they get millions of dollars, and they get to do these things where they go to like conferences as part of the study. And it'll be like essentially a free trip to like Vienna, okay, with dinner, with your plane, with your hotel, and because you're going to give a talk. So now you're not talking about a few $1,000s. They're getting stuff worth tens of thousands of dollars. They're getting sponsorship for their studies, which is tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And of course, they will advance because the pharma company knows that this doctor is very pliable to all this sort of bribery, which is really what it is. It's basically bribery. So a doctor who advances doesn't advance necessarily because he's very smart, but because he has a lot of people pushing him in the background with this money. Because if you're bringing in money to the university loves that, right? They're always cash strapped. So then all the people who are taking the most money from the pharma companies get pushed up to the top. And then you have things like these trials, the things that we depend on to make decisions, they're all run by the pharmaceutical companies. Right. So it's like if, so let's take antidepressants as an example. So, that antidepressants, you have to produce a study that show that it works in order for the FDA to approve the drug, which is fine. That's the way science is. But a drug company, they underwrite all the studies. So the thing is that they get to choose which studies they publish and which they don't. So their strategy is to do, say, 40 studies, and 20 of them they'll just throw in the trash. And then they'll publish the other 20. Well, which do you think those 20 are? The 20 that look the best.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And they've done they've gone through, somebody has gone through and sort of told the whole story of this, and so it's fairly well known. But if it's sort of like if you flip a coin, heads, tails, and you throw out all the tails, you say, see, I get heads every time. This is a great drug. So if you throw out all the trials that don't work and simply count the ones that do work, well, all of a sudden your drug looks great. And this is exactly the story with antidepressants. So the drug looks great. And now you can go spend money promoting it to doctors and say, look at the evidence. The evidence says that this drug is amazing, right? But then you get out there and says, this drug doesn't barely even work. And that's the big problem. So the sort of money goes all the way up. There's one study, and the journal articles that publish these studies, they get a lot of money from pharmaceuticals. If you ever read studies, there's a huge list of conflicts of interest. So, for example, in the sugar industry, what they found, for example, is that they took all the studies on sugar and they divided that into the people that got money from the sugar industry. And virtually every study that the people who didn't get any money from the sugar industry found that sugar is not good for you. But there's a huge number of researchers who got money from the sugar industry who are like, yeah, it's sugar is not that bad for you. So, it's so corrupt. The whole thing is so corrupt. Like you can't even imagine. It's like I look at it and I think, how can people allow this? Like, how can this be legal? It's insane that this stuff is allowable. But the problem is that when you allow this sort of stuff, now you get a biased point of view. Now you get all this information that's being funneled down into the regular doctors on the front lines. We're getting this information from the universities, not knowing that the whole system is corrupt, sort of top to bottom. And then because they're generally good people. And a lot of friends of mine are doctors and they're good people. But if the information they're being fed is that, antidepressants are the greatest, these drugs are the greatest, then what are you going to think? Your friends say that, the specialists say that, the university says that. So you say, here's a drug. And it should never have been like that. It's the same for type 2 diabetes, where people just say, give the drug. It's like, well, what about the diet? Like, who's talking about the diets? Who's talking about how to lose weight? Because it's not the doctors. You can bet your life on that because there's no money behind that.